Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you could join us today. I hope that you're listening either on iHeartRadio or you're live streaming with us on your iPhone, smartphone, or your computer. However you're with us, I am so happy that you're here. We have another wonderful program for you today, and I'm excited to have this program because it's very important. We educate caregivers. That's the purpose of the show. We educate other people that want to know more about diseases, including Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. We talk to caregivers because caregivers need information. It helps them do their job of caregiving a lot better. Caregiving is very difficult, and there's something that caregivers don't know. They don't know what they don't know, because if you never went to school for it or college for it, you have to kind of learn on the job. And it's something that is very difficult to do. And the more education and knowledge that a caregiver has, the better for them and for the person that they're caring for. So today we have a couple of experts that educate caregivers and other people on senior care issues. And these two ladies, I'm so glad they're joining us today. They have some wonderful information to share, and they have been sharing this information across the country. And I'm going to bring them on right now. Today joining us is Lisa Isbell. And Lisa is a senior care advisor in Richmond, Virginia. She's with Senior Care Authority, and she's joining us from her home office over in Richmond, Virginia. So thank you, Lisa, for being here. And also joining us is Cynthia Perthew. Now, Cynthia is a certified dementia practitioner. And here they come up on the screen. Hi, ladies. And Cynthia is also with Senior Care Authority, and she covers the Southwest Florida territory and also a territory in New York. And so these two ladies are experts in their fields. They have been helping families for a long time, dealing with family care issues, caregiving, dementia. And I'm so happy to have you both with us today. And I'm going to start off with Lisa. Lisa, you are joining us again from your home office in Richmond because Senior Care Authority is everywhere. It's all across the country. And thank you for being here. You have something you like to talk about that's near and dear to your heart. It's a special presentation that you like to share, and it's called Things My Children Need to Know. And so if I were an adult child and I had parents that were aging, you would think that I would know everything I would need to know about them because I've lived, with them, grew up with them, and my whole life. But that's not necessarily so, is it, Lisa?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And thanks for having me on, Marcia. No, this is a topic that unfortunately for many families is a very awkward topic. I think everybody has a fear of talking about their mortality and discussing issues involving illness or incapacity or anything along those lines. So these are topics that everyone kind of knows that they should probably talk about, but very few people ever actually sit down and have that conversation or do any real planning within their family about wishes and about how people would like to live out their final days. And this really is a condensed presentation that I've done in the past. And it really came about after experience I had with my own family several years ago when my dad passed away. And he went from being very active, teaching, traveling, living his life very, by all appearances, very healthy, to being diagnosed with an illness and then dying within a 3-week period. So these were things that, and so these were things that, we had touched on some of these things, but it was always kind of, well, that's down the road, or, there was really no sense of urgency to it. And so a lot of this came after experiences that my family dealt with after his death. But then also things that I've picked up with client families and things that they've had to handle as well on their end. So again, this is sort of a condensed version of it, but just to kind of hit some highlights on it. One of the first areas, particularly when obviously when people are still living, oftentimes adult children have no idea about their parents' medical information. They may know if they've had a significant illness, if they've had cancer, or, if they've been diagnosed with Parkinson's or something like that. But a lot of adult children have no idea about who their parents' doctors are. They might know the name of the primary care doctor, or have known it years ago, but what if that doctor retired or their parents switched practice or something along those lines? So oftentimes adult children have no idea who the primary care is, but also most people have a team of specialists they work with as well. Who's their cardiologist? Who's their endocrinologist? Anything along those lines. So just a current list of their doctors and their contact information would be a great start for kids to have. But then on top of that, due to HIPAA, parents need to fill out that form, the HIPAA form, authorization form, to let the doctors speak to the children as well. So that's an important piece of that as well. Another thing related to the medical side is what's their preferred hospital. Some people have very definite opinions about what hospital they want to go to if something happens to them. So that would be something to let them know, children know as well. As I mentioned, oftentimes people know if it's a significant illness, if they've had cancer or something like that, kids will generally know that. But other things that happen in their medical history may be very important for a hospital to know, or if it's an urgent situation, but kids have no idea, or they may have a vague recollection of, I think dad had a heart attack at some point, but I don't know, and so just a brief medical history and kind of a timeline can be really important. Another basic one is medication. What medications do they take and why? A lot of times if there's been an illness and somebody has to go to the hospital very suddenly, kids will go into the house and try and gather things up or figure out what's going on. And there's just, sometimes piles of medicine bottles. They have no idea what this medicine is for, if it's current or if it's just one of these bottles that people don't throw away, things like that. So keeping a list of current medications and the reason for taking it and the dosage is really important. Along with that, a really basic one that oftentimes people have no idea is what is the parent's blood type. Most of the time people have no idea. So that's a basic one. And then another one that kind of goes along with the medications is allergies. Are they allergic to anything? That can be significant if it's a sudden hospitalization situation. So that's kind of a brief overview on the medical side of things, in terms of things that it's good for your children to know about. Another category is financial. And this can be a personal thing that people don't want to talk about. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't want to disclose to children all the ins and outs of their financial situation. And that's fine. However, it should be written out somewhere, with some information that can help in the event, again, if the person becomes incapacitated or if they pass away. And so that would include things like a list of all their accounts. So that would be bank accounts, investment accounts, 401ks, Roth, CDs. It's amazing the number of people who have accounts in multiple banks all around town. Because a certain bank may have had a higher interest rate on a CD. So they've got 100,000 at this bank and they've got 50,000 at that bank. And there needs to be a list kept of all those things so that money can be tracked down at some point. And the list should include things like what's the account number of the bank, of the account. What's the password? We live in the digital age and everything is accessible through digital means. So you've got to be able to log into that account, particularly if it's one that's not local. Do your parents have a financial planner? If so, who is it and how do you reach them? Another big one is beneficiaries. Are beneficiaries current on those accounts? If it's a divorce situation, was it ever updated after the divorce? Or if someone had passed away, was that information updated? So those are all important things to look at. Power of attorney is a huge one. And that's one that a lot of times people just, for whatever reason, they don't take that step to get a power of attorney set up for themselves, both for financial as well as healthcare. And so that's something that's an easy process to do, and relatively inexpensive process to do with an attorney. And, but it's something that oftentimes gets neglected until a situation comes up. So having that in place can be hugely helpful. Another area in terms of finances is a safe deposit box. Who has access to that safe deposit box? Because if it's not specified, a person just can't get into it unless it's on file with the bank as to who has access to that. Then the issue is the key to the safe deposit box. Who's got the key? So that's another big one. In addition to the financial planner, kids should be told who's their accountant. Do they have a CPA? Who files their taxes? All that information. And then included in this list should be things like, are there any outstanding loans? Are there any auto loans? Any equity line loans, personal loans that have been given? All those things can help a person, help an adult child come in if there's a situation of incapacity or death, for them to kind of sort through everything. And before I kind of go into a couple more of these, one suggestion for how to organize all this that's just very basic would be to create a binder. I had a client years ago who I went to see him in his home, and he walked out and he just was carrying this 3-ring binder. And on the cover of it, it said, "What to do when I can't." And he told me he had made one of those for his wife and for each of his children. And he just had regular dividers in it and did it by category. And he had everything listed out for them. So while this is an awkward topic, think about what a huge gift that was for his children when the time came to make their life so much easier, to have to deal with all these things. So, sometimes when you're going through all this, it can be overwhelming. You don't have to do all this overnight. But if you choose a category, do the category, get a binder, do a divider and fill out the information in that category and then move on to the next one. And it makes it much more easier to bite off in small steps doing it that way. So we talked about medical and financial. Another category that's often overlooked is military service. A lot of older men in particular, at this point, we're kind of closing out on the World War II generation, and now it's a lot of Korean War and Vietnam vets. And there's a lot of potential benefits that are out there for veterans. So it's a great idea to put down, if they did serve, what were the locations and their service dates, because that can go a long way toward helping track down any benefits that they may be eligible for. There's a document that all veterans received called a DD-214, which is their discharge papers. And it was pretty well drilled into everyone's head when they left service, always hold on to your DD-214. And so most children, when they go through the papers of their parents, will come across that if they served. After my dad died and I was going through his desk, I found his DD-214. I'd never seen it before. I also found out, I knew he'd been in the Army, but I also found out that he had served in the reserves for another 6 years after he got out, which I had no idea about. So, and I asked my mother, I said, why did you never tell us that he was in the Army that long? And she said, well, it was a long time ago and just didn't seem that important right now. So I think it's just one of those things people overlook, and life moves on. Legal is a whole nother category. So I'm not going to get into all that right now because that's a huge category, but the basics on that one, I've already touched on power of attorney, but things like a will, healthcare directives, all those things are really, really important to have, and also for family members to know how to access those. But kind of tied into that is something that many families do not talk about, and that's funeral wishes. Some people don't care. Some people say, I don't want a funeral, don't do anything for me. But some people have very strong opinions on what they want done and how they would like a service to go. So basic things. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to donate your body to science? Is there a prepaid funeral plot? If you're a veteran, would you like military honors? All those things are questions that would make things much easier for family members if they were discussed in advance. The service itself. Is there a particular music that you want to have at the service? And then something like an obituary. Sometimes you'll find people who've written their own obituary and they just leave the dates off.
My mom did that. I thought it was kind of strange, but she wanted to be sure she had everything in there that would tell about her life,
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, because when you're, speaking from my own experience, when you've got so many things coming at you at one time and you're trying to plan a funeral service and you've got to get this obituary in the newspaper by the deadline that the newspaper has, you have no idea. Fortunately for me, my dad had stuck in his drawer a resume, which was really helpful for me to know date. I mean, I knew the generalities, but I didn't know any specifics. So that was really helpful for me to go through. And I actually learned quite a bit going through this resume of things I had no idea that he had done. So that can be really helpful. Going along with that, another piece of it is who should be told if one of your parents passes away? How do you spread that news to their friends? Which is kind of odd in today's world of Facebook and everything else. But our parents were of a different era, and they may not be on Facebook. So how do you figure out, and even distant relatives? I remember talking to one of my dad's cousins months after he died, and I had to just apologize to him because it was not someone who immediately came to mind to try and track down a phone number for. So things like, specifying either a list of people that you want notified, or where is your address book? Because a lot of older people keep a paper copy of an address book. My parents always kept a Christmas card list, which was really helpful to go through the Christmas card list and figure out who to notify. If a person is a member of clubs, like, the Lions Club or the Kiwanis Club or something like that, notifying them. Certainly churches can be a great help, and friends through church to notify. But those are all things that when things are very chaotic, it's really helpful to have an up-to-date list of phone numbers or email addresses to use to reach people. And then I'll just wrap up with this very quickly. I think one of the things that gets overlooked a lot are personal items. And sometimes personal items are the most important items of all to family. And it's not the big things. It's not oftentimes it's not the expensive paintings or furniture or things like that mean the most. It's the small items that are familiar and that you grew up with, and that they have a lot of sentimental value. And so it helps a lot if there's discussion ahead of time of who the parent wants to get those items and how to divide them up equally among a family. But then there's things like recipes. And, my husband's grandmother died recently, and she was a fantastic cook. She always cooked on holidays and everything else. And I can't tell you how many emails and text messages have gone around trying to figure out how to recreate Granny's recipes, because none of us knew how to make those recipes. It was in her head. It wasn't written down. And so things like that are really important. And also pictures. You would be amazed at how many pictures a family accumulates, but most of the time people don't write on the back of them. So children and grandchildren have no idea who these people are. So taking the time to do basic things like that can really be helpful. And again, do it step by step. It doesn't all have to happen overnight, but just take it one step at a time. But it can be, even though it's sort of an awkward topic a lot of times, it can just be a huge gift for family members if you do things like that.
Well, Lisa, I'm so impressed with your comprehensive list, because I could identify with so many of those issues when my mom got sick and when she passed away, because if we had done a lot of the things that you suggested, it would have been a lot easier. I remember sitting at her bedside, and she was in the hospital in a hospice unit, and she thought of some things that she thought, I don't think I told somebody who I want to give my china teacups to, or a lot of things like you're talking about, the big silver platter. Maybe it wasn't in her will, and she was thinking about these things because she was at end of life. And so I remember taking my phone out, and I had take notes when she listed who she wanted what to go to, because otherwise there would be no record of it. And so I think your suggestions and your information really hits home, and it's going to help a lot of families, because everything you said is absolutely important. The truth that these are things that definitely the children need to know. And if you don't have children, it might be your favorite niece, or it might be a grandchild, but somebody needs to have all of that information. And so you just gave such a wonderful list. So great for that. And I hope that people took notes and they can do this to help their families through these difficult situations. And it also prevents a lot of family feuds and a lot of dysfunctional relationships in families when you can say, no, this is what mom said, or this is what dad wrote, because you don't have to squabble about it, because unfortunately that does happen in families when you get into a situation like this. And so if parents, take your advice and do it now and just start, because it is a lot of information, but it is really important. So I want to thank you so much for all of that. It was really, really good.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we have more wonderful information from another senior care expert. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care for people that have memory loss, whether it's from Alzheimer's or other types of dementia. Arden Courts is there for you as a caregiver and there for your loved one. And because they care for you, the caregiver, and they want the best for your loved one, they have lots of resources to help the caregiver. And this is one of them. This book is called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers, written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. And it's, I think, in the 5th edition right now. It keeps being updated because it's been around a long time, because it's a go-to book for caregivers. And this book is a must-have if you are a caregiver or know a caregiver caring for someone who can't care for themselves, and you need help and you need resources and you need information. So I highly recommend this book. And guess what? It's free just for the asking, because you are listening to this program today. And so if you'd like a copy of the 36-Hour Day, all you have to do is send an email with your name, address, and telephone number to delray@arden-courts.com and tell them that you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll make sure they send a book right to you. Again, that email address is delray, DELRAY, at Arden, ARDEN, -courts, COURTS.com. So get your book right away. You'll be glad you did. And if you know somebody that could use the book, ask for them and give it to them as a gift. They would really appreciate it. So I'm happy I have two wonderful guests today. We just heard from Lisa Isbell. She was talking about what children need to know before their loved one passes. And it was a wonderful list of to-dos to make things easier as our parents are aging. But there's more, because Cynthia, she is Cynthia Perthew, and she is also with Senior Care Authority. She covers part of Florida, Southwest Florida, and also New York, and she's with us. She's a certified dementia practitioner, also a senior advisor, and she's joining us from her home office in Naples, Florida, which I happen to be on location for the show also in Naples. So we're both here together, which is a beautiful city. And Cynthia is going to share with us information on a topic that she loves to educate on, and it's called Having the Conversation. So, welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to give a quick, a couple of things that I'm going to do today while I'm talking to you. I'm going to give a quick little introduction to who Senior Care Authority is. And Lisa and I both work for Senior Care Authority. And what we do is we serve as people who can help the caregivers figure out what's a great place for their parent or for their person they're caring for. And we also do consulting work to help them make some decisions. And in working here in Naples, Florida, I do a lot of work with Arden Courts. Love that product and that system. So the majority of my clients have dementia, and that's my specialty, and that's how we work with them. We're there to help you. So if you want to know more about how we can help you, because we're all over the country, you can go to seniorcareauthority.com and say find an advisor and look up the zip code, and it'll lead you to the person who's right there in your neighborhood to help you. So
Wonderful.
Before,
yeah,
just a little commercial there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that information, because people do need the information that you all can provide. And thank you for sharing that. And your topic again is having the conversation. I just have to say this because obviously when you're talking about having the conversation, when we were growing up and we were, getting into puberty and getting out of, elementary school type of thing, that was always the talk was always about the birds and the bees, right? That our parents or another relative had the wonderful job of sitting us down and having the conversation about the birds and the bees. But now we're talking about a different type of conversation, right? And as we get older and as our parents get older, you want to have this special conversation. So that being said, what is the conversation about, and how do we go about having that conversation?
Sure. So I'm going to be brief here because, as Lisa mentioned, we do a lot of presentations in our company. Both of us do. Lisa and I work very closely together, even though we're, hundreds of miles apart. But these presentations are very long. So what I'm going to give you, whether an hour to 2 hours, but we have just a few minutes here, and I just want to give you a couple of little pointers to help you have the conversation. And when I speak about the conversation here, as we get older, it's much more important than the birds and the bees. This is a conversation about how to talk with your parents or an older adult who is in your life to help them get comfortable with whatever transition there is that's coming down the road. And traditionally, that first transition is whether to move someplace out of the home that they may have lived for 65, 70 years to a place that maybe is better suited for them, that provides more safety, more comfort, more eyes watching out for them. It's a healthier place to be, and it's more social. Or maybe even just having someone come in and care for them in their home. A lot of us are very independent. We're very private, and we don't want to have someone come into our home, or we also don't want to go someplace else. So this is about how to have that conversation. And we kind of get here because maybe you have someone you're giving care to, and they're experiencing some cognitive or physical issues, or maybe you're stressed as the caregiver or as the adult child by the endless options that are in elder care and the healthcare system, or you're also stressed by the phone calls you're getting on a regular basis. And maybe you tried countless times to have that conversation with your loved ones about some next steps, but just like some of the things that Lisa talked about, your parents don't want to, not only do they not want to talk about their money, they don't want to talk about moving or going to what I call their mother or their grandmother's nursing home. And what we find now is that places are so exciting and so fun to live in that people extend their lives. They blossom in those final years of their lives. And so this is about how to have that conversation. What we know is that 77% of adult children believe their parents are stubborn about taking their advice or getting help with problems. Now, we also know that, now this is an old fact and figure, but in 2016, over 1 million adults in the United States over the age of 85 lived in community housing. That would be assisted living, independent living, memory care communities. And we know that that number is expected to double by 2030. So if you think it was hard to talk to the million adults in 2016, think how it's going to be double, triple as hard to talk to 2 million adults in 2030. And some of the reasons that you might want to have talks with them is because you're seeing some increased falls or risk of falls. Maybe you're seeing your parents or this loved one that you're working with, and they have on the same clothes multiple days in a row. Maybe their home is really dirty, or they're asking repeat questions over and over. You might also notice they really haven't been drinking or eating regularly. We've just come out of summer, but during that summer months, we have a lot of people who are older who become very dehydrated, and that can lead to some very severe health issues. Maybe they're wandering around. The neighbor calls and says, you know what, I saw your mother. She's down the street. She's in her pajamas. Those kinds of symbols and those kinds of signs tell us that we need to begin to have this conversation and maybe look around. What I want to talk to you about today is that when you're having that conversation with your family or someone you're caring about, I want you to think about the 3 R's. I want you to think about respect. I want you to think about reconciliation. And I want you to think about reasoning. So let's talk about respect just a little bit. If we have respect for those around us, either our siblings that we're having a discussion about helping our parent move to a safer place, or if we're having discussion with our parents, it's about respect, because it's easier if everybody learns to respect the wishes of someone who's aging in our world. This is not about pushing someone, forcing someone. And when I say pushing or forcing, I'm not only talking about the adult loved one, your older loved one. I'm talking about your siblings, who you may have 2 or 3 siblings, and one says, no way, and the other says, yes way, we're going today. We need to find a way to reach consensus in this discussion. And the second R is reconciliation. You know, the goal here is to reconcile with these challenges. And again, reach a best decision for everyone. And that may mean that everybody has to give in a little bit. Maybe one sibling says, mom has to be right down the street from me, but mom wants to be someplace else. There's a way to get some reconciliation, some consensus. And then that third R that I like to talk about is the reason. What are the reasons that you're having these discussions? Those reasons could be that you're watching out for mom or dad's health. Those reasons also could be that you have a full-time job, your husband has a full-time job, you've got teenage kids, and you're looking for college. And mom called every night at 11 o'clock. That could be a very valid reason for trying to make a decision and have a conversation with your parent or your loved one. Either to, again, move someplace that's more conducive to what they have going on, or get somebody to come into the house to help them. And so once we think about those 3 R's, we also want to think about a 4th R, which is a roadmap. And that roadmap is, how are we going to get from one side of this conversation to the other side of this conversation? And I like to say we want to think about identify the players, identify the challenges, identify the objections, identify the resources. So originally in this roadmap, there's no talking here. This is all pre-planning. Who's going to be in that conversation, and why are they in that conversation? What are the challenges? What do you think is going to come back? Traditionally, mom or dad says, I don't have the money, or I want to live in my home forever, or I promised I would never put mother in one of those places. Those are challenges. Or the challenge may also be, I'm not old enough to go there. I would be bored to go there. I want my independence. Those are challenges and objections that we hear. And then let's identify the resources in this roadmap. Who are the resources? Is there a minister that can help with this conversation? Is there a financial planner that can help with this conversation? Goodness gracious, God forbid, there's a sibling that somebody likes better. Maybe they're the one who needs to have the conversation. And so we plan this conversation as a group before we go in for the conversation. And then we kind of set the stage for that conversation. So when you're identifying those players, you want to see who's going to be the leader and why are they. Let's sort out those family dynamics and go back to one of our R's. Let's be respectful to everybody who's in that conversation. Whether it is that sibling that you haven't seen in 20 years that now showed up because they want some money from their parents, or whether it's that sibling who still lives at home at age 65 with the parents, we've got to find respect for all of those people because they're all a valuable part of this conversation. Then we want to also do a brainstorm with those people. And that Zoom has been a wonderful thing for this ability to have some conversations where if somebody gets really upset, they can also just turn the Zoom off and leave. Or they can take their picture off and they can be making ugly faces in the back. But we're going to brainstorm because there are no bad ideas. We need to understand everyone's view, and we want to give everyone the opportunity to speak. I had a group of siblings, and one person was very emotional about this decision, and she was completely opposite of the other majority of siblings. Those siblings were so caring and so kind to say, you know what, let's let her speak. Tell me what you're thinking. And so she was able to do that. Don't interrupt other people. Again, going back to one of our R's, respect those people. And then make a list of the things that were going on. Let's think about the objections that we might hear. Loss of independence, loss of privacy, you're abandoning me, you're throwing me away, the food is bad, everybody's too old, they play bingo all day. Okay, those are objections, and we have the answer to all of them. I can help you find the answers. Lisa can help you find the answers. I know Marcia can help you find the answers. We're going to find how it isn't as bad as you all say it is. And we want to help people understand they're not losing their independence. Again, this is if you go to a community or if you need to have some aid come in. You're not losing your independence. You're not losing your privacy. And people are going to hang out with you. So make a list of those items. One, make a table. I like to show a table in my presentations that shows the objections, what are the answers. Then you're going to plan that conversation. What is the right time of day? For me, I need to have it after lunch when I'm rested, when I've eaten, and I don't need any music or a loud TV going on in the background. That is not going to work for one of these difficult conversations. And also make sure there's plenty of time. Don't whip in the door and say, I got 15 minutes, Mom. I need to have this discussion with you. This is what we're doing. We're doing it now. Again, remove the distractions, turn off phones, eliminate all noise. Make sure there's some snacks and some drinks so that if there's a little bit of a sugar rush or an adrenaline push, get a gummy bear. Have something to eat and make sure there's some water. A really important one, make sure everybody went to the restroom. We don't want to have any excuses during this conversation of, I've got to get out of here. I've got something that I need to do, and I need to go to the restroom. Let's just everybody get set to have this conversation. However, remember, it's not going to be the only conversation. There's not just one. You may have to drip this onto your family members a little bit at a time and get some consensus around a little bit of at a time. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out is I want to go over some phrases that work. And I provide these phrases to my clients in a worksheet for them to take with them when we're having this discussion. So I ask the parents, I say, I want them to ask their parents to tell, I'd like to explore some options with you. You're not going to come in and use the word, I'm putting you someplace, you're moving tomorrow. We're just going to explore the options. And I'm going to tell you as a caregiver, as an adult child, how I explored the options, and I'd love for you to give me some advice of how you think I could explore them differently. You also want to tell them, I know this is difficult. You want to feel them. You want to have some empathy for them, but I know this is a difficult discussion. Another phrase that works is, I want you to be happy, but helping you with daily tasks makes it harder for me to be a good parent to my children. Your parents do not want you to be a bad parent to their grandchildren. So you need to explain to them why their daily task is difficult for you to be a good parent. You might also say to them, you don't seem very happy, and I am exhausted. I'm really looking for a way to help us both. You want to tell them that you worry so much about them because you love them. And you want them to find a way to remain independent, become more active and engaged, and to always be safe. So those are the good phrases that you want to use. Now, let me give you some that you don't want to use. And I know you're going to say, oh, really? Somebody would actually say this? They would actually say these things, okay? You do not want to say, you are a burden to me and my family. Do not say those words. You don't want to say this is annoying and time consuming. You don't want to say you, mother, are being selfish. Those are phrases that will not work, and they will sidetrack your whole conversation. So remember, you want to set the stage. You want to talk about this very similar to how Lisa discussed her things that you want those children to, that the children need to know. You want to talk about this before there's an emergency. I'm in the business. I'm in my 60s. I've had this conversation with my children of where I want to be and how I want to be there. They think I do this business to find my own place. They're partially right. You need to have the conversation before someone comes to you and says there is a crisis and we got to go tomorrow. Where do you want to go? So have this conversation early. Also, wait for a teachable moment. Newspaper stories about someone who got lost and froze to death on a road just coming home from their daughter's Thanksgiving. That's a terrible story, but those are things that happen. Talk about neighbors who maybe had a tragic consequence of living alone or living in the wrong place. Just talk about those teachable moments without saying, and now we're going to talk about getting care for you or moving you out of your home. Just drip these ideas onto your loved one. Also, don't approach this discussion as if you've already made the decision. This is where we're going. This is what I did. This is how we're doing it. You want to ask for their input, and you want to help them be as in control of this as they can be. Now, make a script. Be prepared for resistance, be prepared for disagreement, and be prepared to fail over and over. So that's really it in a nutshell. Again, I, as you probably could tell, could go on and on about this topic, but that's the high level. Here's how you prepare for this. Now, I do want to tell you another little piece that maybe you're going to ask me, Marcia, but I'm getting in there and asking the question myself. Maybe your loved one has dementia and they're not able to follow a conversation. Those are those are different conversations that you would have, and it's a whole different way to do it. And that kind of leads me to one of the reasons that we're also here with you today is that we want to talk about a program that Senior Care Authority is putting together in support of the Walk to End Alzheimer's, because we're very supportive of the Alzheimer's Association. And this conference, if you will, it's a Zoom conference. It's Living with Dementia, and it's a streaming conference that is set up on September 21st, and it's nationwide. So it's from 8:30 to 3 o'clock Pacific time, which, as we know, is 11:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. And there will be 12 speakers. And there is a small cost, and that small cost is $40, but all of that money goes towards the Alzheimer's Association. And it's a donation to the Alzheimer's Association for the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is held in the fall every year in hundreds of locations. So that will have, Lisa and I will be on that program as well, and maybe with some expanded pieces of what we've talked about, as well as, again, 12 other experts who have other bits and pieces of how to live with dementia, whether you have dementia and have a diagnosis or whether your loved one does and you're a caregiver. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Marcia, and see if we have any questions or if there's anything else that you'd like for us to talk about.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. You are awesome. I love your educational pieces about having that conversation, because it's always really hard for families to engage in that. And you gave so many great tips and specific examples. And again, like I said to Lisa, I hope people took notes, because you were just wonderful with educating the adult children and the parents, because they do have to get together, and it's really a difficult thing. I know that a lot of older people are very tight, closed with their money, and they don't want to share, and that sometimes leads them not even to want to give anybody a power of attorney, because they don't trust a lot of people that they're going to do something, before they die. And it's just a sad situation sometimes. And especially, you mentioned people that have dementia, they can be paranoid, they can be stubborn, they can be not understanding of what's going on. They can be confused. So it's doubly hard, having those types of conversations when that person with memory loss thinks there's nothing wrong with them, and they think that they're perfectly fine. And, then you get these arguments and all. So it is a delicate thing. It really is. And your advice is, very well taken. And I like when you said be prepared to fail, because it's not going to be easy, and it is going to happen over and over, and you're going to have to plant those seeds, so to speak, and make that happen. So both of you, Lisa, Cynthia, from Senior Care Authority, I'm so glad you guys came on. Looking forward to telling people more about the conference coming up on September 21st. It's a live stream. It's a virtual conference. It used to be, in person, but now it's wonderful because it's actually available to more people, very affordable. And I love that it's a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association, the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which I participate in as well every year. And that's a really, really good thing. Do we know how someone could sign up to participate in the virtual conference, Cynthia?
Correct. I think there's a number of different ways. We have flyers out, but this is not necessarily that opportunity for a flyer. But I can tell you that if you would just send an email to info@scanyfl.com, I'll get you signed up. I think that's the simplest, shortest way to do it. So again, that's info@SCA, N as in New York, YFL.com, and we'll get you signed up. I think something else I really want to reiterate is there are about 50 of us that work with Senior Care Authority across the country, and all of us are focused on educating our clients. And we believe that education is what makes them savvy about the amount of money that people will need to pay as they age, and about the big decisions that they make. And we have dozens of presentations around all sorts of things that have to do with an aging individual and decisions that people make as they age, health-wise, just financial-wise, legal-wise. And so just always think of us as a resource. There are, we do have a business, but this education component is something that we do out of the kindness of our hearts and as a support for our clients and potential clients.
Well, I want to thank both of you for partnering with us today with Arden Court's memory care community. I know both of you are supporters, and we work together to help all the people that need help, and education is key. So this is why we have the show. This is why you do what you do, both of you. And I want to thank both of you so much for participating today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Marcia.
You're very welcome. I want to thank our listeners and people watching today for joining in, and remind you, don't forget about the 36-hour day book. If you'd like to get a free copy, email delray@arden-courts.com. Get your free book. We have another wonderful program next week, every Tuesday, 6:00 p.m. to 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time on caregiversolutions.info. You can watch it live stream, or you can go onto your phone, download the iHeartRadio app, and listen to it on your phone. So either way, I hope you join us. Thank you both again, and hope that you'll come back another time and share. And I hope you, our audience, will also come back next week for another program of the Caregiver Solution Info Show. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more